everyone. I'm Helen Rush from Bradford Better Start, and I'm here today to introduce our presentation on speech, language and communication. Like the rest of the conference, it's particularly focusing in this work in the face of the new challenges and deepening adversity. I'm going to introduce the theme of how speech, language and communication is a common thread running through the whole of the ABS programme and not just specifically in the direct speech and language interventions. Next slide, please. The Baby Week video that you watched as you were coming into the breakout room today was basically a montage of some of the highlights from our Baby Week back in November last year. It's one of the key events in the Bradford Better Start calendar, and it's our opportunity to showcase all the work that's actually going on across the whole district and to truly involve babies, children, families and the workforce in everything that we're working with. As with the whole project though, we've got 2 years left to run and are looking for the long-term sustainability of the Baby Week, and therefore this year decided to focus on one specific area, focusing on the key messages of Bradford babies talking and speech, language and communication. As you saw in the video, it was very successful and started people thinking about how speech, communication and language needs really is everybody's business. Next slide, please. So all the recent data has started to highlight the actual concern about speech, language and communication across the country. The Burko report, the 10 years on, was commissioned by ICANN, which is now Speech and Language UK, and the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists, to actually look at what was actually happening in the actual reality of speech and language across the country. One of the key messages from the report is that we've all got a part to actually play in supporting children, their families and the professionals working with them. But why? Speech, communication and language is so much bigger than that. It's all about all the things listed. It's all about the turn taking, the attachment, expressing ourselves, understanding, thinking and learning, social interaction, emotional well-being, playing and listening skills. It can be such a good indicator of emotional health and well-being. It can be an indicator of future progress with academic ability, reading and literacy. And generally, if the right support is put in place, it can have a huge outcome on children's outcomes, huge impact on children's outcomes. So what does the Better Start actually offer? You're going to hear in a few minutes from the other sites about some of the specific interventions that are being offered to support babies, children's families and the workforce. As you've already heard, communication really is everybody's business. But as people are becoming increasingly aware of this, particularly following the COVID pandemic, people are now facing other uncertainties with the cost of living crisis. It can obviously mean that speech, language and communication again doesn't seem to be a priority. We're all, however, learning how this is the reason why it really needs to be. If we can really support babies and children, the parents and the workforce to work together to improve the outcomes in speech and language, there can be so many long-term benefits. You're going to hear from Catherine in Blackpool in a minute about some of the statistics and data that do illustrate the impact of this. You're going to also hear from the other sites about the specialist work that's going on to provide some of the specialist interventions to support the children, families and the workforce. Lots of the interventions and services are unique and bespoke to the populations around the ABS sites. We don't have time to talk about all the interventions that are offered across the country, but what we do have time to talk about is the bigger messages and all that these programmes actually offer. So pathways. Families we know should have access to full services to support speech and language, from the universal targeted up to the specialist speech and language therapists. There should be smooth transitions between all three of these, which is why the arrows actually depict that. We're really lucky in Bradford to be leading some work on the integrated pathway across the whole district. But we do know that ABS is never going to be able to provide all the specialist services that are required, but they can facilitate that true partnership working. They can share good practice and they can share research and learning to enable children to really get their best outcomes. So during the rest of the presentation, you're going to hear from some of the ABS sites about the amazing support, assessments and interventions that are offered across all the different programmes. You're going to hear about how the sites all work with children, parents and families and the workforce to develop the skills, knowledge and experience of all. Although, as I mentioned, all the sites are really unique, they've all got their diverse demographic and population. Speech, communication, language is the common thread running across all of them. We know it's been complicated even more by COVID-19. We know that there's extra stresses and pressures down to the cost of living crisis. So everybody really needs to get involved. Communication needs to be everybody's business. And I'm going to pass you over to Jackie from Lambeth, who's going to start saying about babies and children. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. So I'm just going to share with you some of the key messages across the ABS sites with regards to babies and children. So the key messages that we felt would support our children with their communication and language skills is that ensuring early intervention pathways are paramount across all local authorities. Making communication and language everyone's business, as Helen mentioned earlier. And we have been doing that across the ABS sites by giving out clear health promotion messages, such as the Big Little Moments campaign. We need to deliver evidence-based interventions and interventions that are appropriate for the age group we are targeting at, creating a knowledgeable workforce, supporting a culture of strong attachments with babies and children, and tuning in to the child's voice. So really listening to what our babies and young children are telling us about their needs and then responding to it. Working with children and their families in their own environment. So thinking about where they are, such as, are they in childcare settings? What can we be doing in the home environment? So thinking about babies and children in the context of poverty. So the impact of poverty in early childhood. Well, in early childhood, the impact of poverty on a child's speech, language and communication development can have huge implications to later outcomes in all areas of their development and their later outcomes for literacy skills. So up to 50% of children living in areas of poverty within the UK will have delayed communication skills, and up to 90% of those children that have persistent language struggles, they'll go on to having reading difficulties. Children from lower income families will fall behind by up to a year on entry to school in their vocabulary range compared to other children from middle income families. Now, these statistics clearly outline the need and the importance of the work we are doing across the ABS site. We are setting clear pathways for early identification and support to help narrow these gaps for these disadvantaged groups who are living within areas of poverty. But the good news is that we are focusing on our youngest children. And when communication and language difficulties are resolved by age 5.5, children are more likely to develop good literacy skills. So these stats were taken from the Communication Trust Big Change project, and that's referenced on this slide should you want to find out more. So now we're going to go over to Natalia from Nottingham, who's going to focus on the key messages for parents and carers.
Thank you, Jackie. So good morning, everyone. My name is Natalia and I'm from Small Steps, Big Changes in Nottingham. Across the ABS sites, we have a commitment to ensure that families from all diverse backgrounds are provided with the opportunities and support to develop their children's language skills. We aim to build the skills and knowledge of all families by, and as the director stated, is imperative earlier on, providing language-rich, communication-friendly environments for everyone, delivering more accessible services and resources for families from diverse backgrounds. Here in Nottingham, we have translated leaflets into Arabic, Urdu, Polish and Romanian to support families with how to maintain their child's first language and to support with age-appropriate speech, language and communication development. Empowering families to develop the capabilities and the confidence to support key language skills to ensure that they are building the blocks for their child's well-being, their school readiness and their lifelong prosperity. Next slide, please. So parents are at the core of their child's learning. Language skills are a crucial part of a child's general development, are fundamental to their learning, their socialisation skills and well-being. Early language acquisition is recognised as being a predictor of school readiness and long-term academic attainment. Early language development can be influenced by a child's home environment and that good quality of regular parent-child interactions. Therefore, at home, it's important to speak the language you feel most comfortable in speaking to ensure your child hears a rich and full language model, regardless of what the language is, to boost their chances of successful learning. It is imperative that we value language and not prioritise tentative English. So communicate familiar and consistent language using keywords, stories and lullabies in a baby's home language. Young children who are learning more than one language are learning more sounds and meanings than monolingual children. They are gaining a better understanding of how language works. However, this doesn't mean that they'll take longer to use spoken language. In fact, we should expect a bilingual child's language skills to develop at the same rate as a monolingual child's when you consider their skills in both languages. I will now hand you over to Sian from Southend, who will be introducing the workforce theme. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sian from Southend at start, and I'm joined with my colleagues, Lindsay Weston and Isabel Ratterslaw, and we will be sharing a case study from Southend focusing on our workforce. But often, I think we refer to the early years workforce en masse, and we wanted to share with you an overview of the breadth of the workforce when we consider all who have a role and can support our little ones' communication and language development. From across all of the Better Start sites, it's apparent that the success of that support only occurs when all parties collaborate and communicate and have a shared understanding of the important role that together we all play. In the time of this collective uncertainty, as we've heard earlier when the directors were having their Q&As, the cost of living crisis has meant that we can see an increasing number of parents and carers priorities maybe changing as a result and a consequence, which highlights the important role that the workforce does have in keeping the lens, as Tara mentioned earlier, on that childhood development and in particular communication and language, and ensure it's in the forefront of everyone's mind. Another challenge, of course, is that the workforce itself is not immune to the pressures of the cost of living crisis. And for example, locally, there's been a huge impact on our early years providers, and we've seen a real increase in the turbulency of the workforce within early years providers, and also in some cases, some settings actually considering having to close because of their staffing issues. So we're going to hand over now to Catherine from Blackpool, who's going to discuss the importance of early identification.
Thanks, Sian. So as Sian said, I'm Catherine, I'm from Blackpool, and I'm going to talk to you about the Blackpool Post-Welcome Speech, Language and Communication Triage Panel. Not the snappiest of titles, but a really good example nonetheless of early identification of speech, language, communication need in a partnership with the people who deliver the interventions attached to it. So the background about that, in Blackpool, we'd found emerging evidence from the Ages and Stages questionnaire and our early years foundation stage profile results. They resulted in the need to identify a common speech language communication need assessment tool, which could be used across the partnership. We identified Welcome as that tool. For those not familiar with Welcome, and I know Isabel's going to talk to you about it a little bit more later, Welcome is a speech and language communication assessment tool which assesses children's speech, language and communication need against developmental expected statements, of which there are 10 in each section. This generates a score out of 10, which then informs whether children have a red, amber or green rating. Children with a red or amber score are referred into the post-welcome panel using a single entry referral form. So health colleagues and education colleagues and the wider workforce that Sian's just described all use the same referral form and the single point of entry for that form. Health visiting teams carry out the welcome developmental checks along with the ASQs at the 9 to 12 month, 27 month and 3 to 4 year old healthy child development check. And early years practitioners, including childminders, assess all children in the preschool cohort and any other children that they're concerned about through the universal cycle of observation and assessment. Members of the panel consist of the Quality and Inclusion Team Manager from Blackpool Council, an NHS speech therapist, and a therapist from our commissioned speech and language service Communicate, our literacy advisory teacher, and representative from the Community Connect team within the Centre of Early Child Development. We've got a full-time triage panel administrator, and it's chaired by the Early Years Senior Manager, and at the moment that's me. Before the panel meet, one of the aims is to gather as much information about the child and their family as possible before we meet, so that we can have a holistic view of the child and the family, not just the clinical information that's presented on the referral. We do this by triangulating some data we gather from the Community Connector, having conversations with parents and explaining the process and describing the types of interventions and services that are available to them. We gain permission from parents to talk to early year settings where the referral has come in from health to see if they've got concerns, and we ask them to do a welcome assessment to track back to where the child's score is green. Then we help them to use the Big Book of Ideas, which is part of the welcome toolkit, to start supporting that child's needs even before the panel meet. We've discussed so far 1,395 children under 5 at the panel since we started in February 2020, and children and their families are discussed, are offered one or more interventions depending on the welcome score and the other information we gather at a universal plus, targeted and or specialist level, so those levels that Helen was referring to before. These interventions are all evidence-based and take place where the children are, and involve coaching for adults who spend the most time with the children, most importantly parents, but also the early years workforce who see their children in their settings. Interventions include a home visiting service, which uses Hannon's BARC strategies, Hannon's It Takes Two to Talk, and support for children in their early years setting using ICANN, now Speech Language UK, Early Talk and Early Talk Boost, as well as the NHS Clinical Speech Language Therapy. Once children have reached the end of their intervention, they're returned to the triage panel by the provider of that intervention, and next steps are discussed. This could include escalation from targeted to specialist, or de-escalation from specialist to targeted, or for them to be discharged altogether if they've made good progress and their welcome score is green for their chronological age. Next slide, please. So before I leave, I just wanted to give you some headline data around speech and language. It matters. So in a report published by the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists, it identified that children with primary language difficulties are at higher risk of developing social and emotional difficulties. In fact, as many as 60% of young offenders are believed to have a speech and language communication need. In the same report by the Royal College, they suggest that improving language development in the early years is an important tool through which education and social equality between social classes can be tackled. And finally, in terms of school readiness, if left unaddressed, speech-language communication difficulties can affect children in their adult life. For example, poor communication skills affect employability, and 88% of long-term unemployed men have been found to have a speech and language need. I'm now going to hand over to Jackie, who's going to talk to you more about what the work that they're doing in Lambeth around babies and children. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, for that really interesting insight into clear pathways for early identification. And it really showed that you were making communication and language everybody's business. I'm going to share with you a case study of a programme that we deliver in Leap, Lambeth, called Supporting Babies' Next Steps, and thinking about the ingredients that make a successful intervention. So for Supporting Baby Next Steps, it has been based on an evidence-based programme, REAL, which was Raising Early Achievement in Literacy, designed by the NCB. It is an early intervention. We recognise that there wasn't very many interventions for the very young age group of 0 to 12 months, so for babies. So we developed it ourselves within LEAP based on the REAL materials. It is a multi-agency approach programme. we have worked with another programme within LEAP called Baby Steps, which is a licensed perinatal education programme developed by the NSPCC, but it is delivered by a multidisciplinary team of Guy's and St Thomas's Trust, Lambeth Council and Evelina. So we consulted the parents from this programme who felt that they wanted to know, after being part of that programme, wanted to know more about their child's development. So hence the name Supporting Babies' Next Steps. We, as well as being a multi-agency approach programme, we do think about the child's environment. We think about it emotionally and physically, and make sure that it is comfortable for both parents and babies, and that they can continue their daily routines within the sessions, and that there's lots of space for baby to move. And we try to make it a very supportive emotional environment. We also invite other services in to talk about what they can offer our parents. Tuning into young children and giving them a voice. Well, whilst we're talking about the theory, we introduce lots of interactive activities so that parents can watch what their babies are doing whilst we're talking about why they're doing it and why is it important. We also offer opportunities for relationship building, so parents can build relationships with each other, babies can socialise with each other, and it also gives an opportunity for both babies and parents to strengthen their bonds and attachments. Another key part of the intervention is that it is at a critical time. Many of our parents are first-time parents, and they seem to be very keen to want to know what they can be doing with their child. So it's a critical time for them. So we use the sessions as an opportunity to share some of our key messaging, such as our health promotion messaging from our speech and language team, around talk and play every day and keep your home language alive, as many of us, our Lambeth family, speak more than one language. So enough of me talking, we're going to have a little look at a short video of this in practice.
So Supporting Babies' Next Steps is training that we deliver for parents and babies of up to a year old. It looks at children's communication and language development, physical development, and their personal, social and emotional development.
I was looking forward to learning how I can help him learn. You can feed, the babies can have a sleep if they need, no one is stressed if their baby's having a cry, it's all very relaxed, and I think that's really good. It's given me the confidence to, make more of an effort with him, to speak to him. Sometimes you might feel a bit silly speaking in public to something that's not responding, someone that's not responding, but I think he's actually starting to come around a bit now, which is really good. And my partner as well, I've communicated everything I've been taught here, which is obviously helpful for us both at home.
Because it's really good and engaging, and her socializing. I think the facilitators are great. Lots of good tips how to support her next steps into literacies. Lots of I would say insights,
So as you could see, in there, the parents are given a pack of resources that they can use within the sessions and actually take them home as well, so that they can do the activities at home. And any activities we suggest are all low cost or free, so items that parents might find around the home. So because we are aware of cost, so we keep everything as low cost, so we try to, so we can help benefit all families with whatever income they have. Now, we use the ORIM framework, which was developed for the REAL programme, as I mentioned earlier, to give parents a framework to use on what they can be doing with their children. And parents find this really helpful. So within the ORIM framework, you've got what opportunities can parents give their children. And we talk about their routines. So opportunities for talk could be in nappy changing time, or meal times, bath times. So you want it to be positive opportunities for them when works for the parent and the child. So that supports their emotional environment as well. We talk about recognising, acknowledging what babies are doing. and in tuning into what they're doing and really tuning into their voice. And we talk about interaction, so the serve and return. And we've got a lovely picture of the first one at the top of a parent interacting with their baby there, which is, we're going to talk about serve and return in a bit more detail in a minute. And we talk about modelling, so the real importance of the behaviours of parents and how that can impact their child's development. So what did our parents say? Well, I didn't think about introducing books so early on, so there was a misconception when to introduce books. So parents were really surprised that we were recommending as early as possible, even from the bump, reading to your bump. So that was interesting feedback. Also, I knew my baby needed tummy time, but I didn't know why. Well, many practitioners will tell parents to do things with their babies, but parents they know it's good for them, but they don't know why. So we found that whilst we're doing the activities, sort of explaining the theory behind and why it would be important that a child really helps parents to want to do these activities more. And so finally, just a recommendation is that to build relationships, you do need to keep it fun and have a sense of humour. So I'm going to just sort of leave you with this slide. This really shows the child's voice there by looking at his face. He's communicating something to us. And then we're going to move on to Natalia from Nottingham, who's going to talk about an interesting case study around parents and carers.
Thank you, Jackie. It's great to hear about the wonderful early intervention work going on in Lambeth and that parent collaboration that the directors touched upon earlier on. So I'm now going to discuss a speech, language and communication intervention that we commissioned here over here in Nottingham, which is Elkland's Let's Talk with Under Fives, which is delivered by the Nottinghamshire Healthcare Trust Early Intervention Speech and Language Team for parents and carers with children aged 2.5 to 4 years across the 4 SSBC wards in Nottingham. The course is delivered by a qualified speech and language therapist and consists of 6 weekly group sessions of 2 hours within a community setting. Parents are offered the opportunity to gain a level 1 accredited qualification upon completion of the course, the workbook and homework tasks. Parents whose first language is not English are offered further home support to complete the workbook by the facilitator, utilising an interpreter, and the work completed is transcribed into English. So what does the course cover? So the course covers how play supports children's language and communication development, useful strategies and practical ideas on how to support the adult-child interaction, understanding how children's comprehension of language develops, how to support your child to increase their spoken language, and how to use book sharing as a tool to support language development. Now, a huge emphasis within the course is based upon the serve and return approach that Jackie briefly touched upon in the previous presentation. Parents learn about the importance of that two-way back and forth conversation. This is done through modelling of facial expressions and changing their tone of voice to help young toddlers to understand the serve and return of conversational language and that relationship between words and objects, experiences and feelings. So what does make this course unique and the first of its kind within the UK? So following consultation and co-production with parents, we identified a need to improve accessibility to the course amongst our most diverse populations. We utilised a test and learn approach and offered the course for Arabic speaking families, utilising an Arabic interpreter. The course was promoted and advertised in the local vicinity via other speech and language therapy teams, local partners and on social media, including flyers which were written in Arabic. We have now run a course in Arabic and plan to offer the course in other popular languages to further reduce those language barriers. So I'm now going to highlight the speech, language and communication support given to a bilingual family. Zainab attended the Let's Talk with Under Fives adult learning course. She was increasingly concerned about her 4-year-old son's spoken language skills and felt that they were not age appropriate for his age. Zainab speaks conversational English and finds reading and writing in English difficult. Zainab was concerned about her child's language being delayed in English and the home language. Zainab participated in the sessions through discussions with other families in the group, and everyone shared ideas that were tried out at home. Supporting Zainab to complete her workbook in English and finding alternative ways for Zainab to develop her knowledge on speech and language development without reliance on using English, enabled Zainab to try new ideas out at home, which were in her home language. Zainab was also keen to gain the level 1 accreditation, as this could lead to other educational opportunities and as a result, increase her confidence. So following on from the sessions, Zainab focused on supporting her children's language and communication more confidently by increasing face-to-face playtimes at home, supporting child communication at home by speaking to him in her home language, using commentating during play and everyday routines, and ensuring that she passed on correct advice to nursery about bilingualism. So how has the course been evaluated by parents and carers? So the course has been evaluated very positively as a whole from families. Here are just some of the key themes gained from the feedback of families who attended the sessions. The therapists could personalise sessions to everyone's needs. There were lots of examples to use at home, and subsequently we could share these in groups with others. I feel a lot more confident and equipped to support my home language. My child has a lot more confidence interacting with other children. We're now having meaningful, short conversations with each other. It is important to have that patience and give your child more time to communicate, which is that serve and return that I spoke about earlier. So since the course commenced in 2021, 17 parents have gained a level 1 qualification, and this was by September 2022. Currently, there are more families going through that accreditation process to gain a level 1 qualification, so this number will increase. 95% of parents rated the course as excellent, with the remaining 5% it's good. So I'm now going to hand you over to Sian from Southend, who will be discussing how Southend has supported the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. So thinking about then the workforce, and across our 5 Better Start sites, we were thinking and reflecting on what makes a difference. Across all of the 5 sites, these 4 aspects were identified as being key to ensuring that the workforce is knowledgeable and confident when supporting children's communication and language development. They need opportunities to share information, to work collaboratively, to receive training and continuous opportunities to access CPD, and develop a shared language when considering our little ones. Next slide, and I shall hand over to Isabel.
Thanks, Sian. So one of the ways we've embedded all of these aspects, that's information sharing, working collaboratively, training, and the development of a shared language in Southend, has been to ensure that the workforce from both health and education all use the same communication and language screening tool. We use Welcome, which is the same tool described by Catherine earlier when she talked about its use in Blackpool. We also use it at different touch points in the children's lives. Depending on the outcome of the screen, these different touch points, a range of interventions is offered and resources given to families. Early identification is key. The aim is to ensure that no child slips through the welcome journey gap. As can be seen at the beginning of the journey, the health visiting team are being trained by the SLT team to use the welcome screen at the under ones check. This is a very effective platform, as there is locally a high take-up from families for this statutory visit, well over 90%. Having this screen so early on ensures that families are reminded of the importance of their children's communication and language development. And families are reminded of this importance again when the SLT team offer a welcome screen when their child is 23 months old. The child's journey continues, and the specialist teachers, Sian and Lindsay, have welcome trained the early years providers. So we're talking about childminders, settings and schools to then carry out the screens themselves, focusing on their concerning children and knowing the relevant pathways to follow if a child subsequently needs further support. Finally, the Talking Transitions project also considers welcome screening as a crucial element. As children transition from early years provider to school, their welcome screen outcomes and the support that best fits the child and their family are discussed and shared with their new schools team. And now I'll hand you over to Lindsay to tell you more about Talking Transitions.
Thank you, Isabel. So Talking Transitions, our award-winning project, brings early years providers, that's childminders, preschools, day nurseries, school nurseries, and the schools that the children will be transitioning to together a whole year before the children actually transition. The project builds respectful relationships between the providers as they learn and work together, and it also ensures that they all have a greater understanding of the communication language support a child and their family may potentially need prior to starting school. Next slide, please. The Learning Together element of the Talking Transitions project specifically ensures that the early years providers and schools train together in Elkland's speech and language course, which Isabel, Sian and I jointly deliver. This training is also offered to a range of other professionals and delivery partners, from family centres, Southend City Childminder Leads, Southend's SEND teams, ASD family support workers, A Better Start Southend's creche workers, representatives from SAFS, which is an independent charity and local volunteer organisation in Southend, and representatives from the A Better Start Southend Your Family team, again making clear the message that young people's communication language is everyone's business. Now in its 4th year, we have trained 74 learners on this Level 3 accredited 10-week programme. It's been quite a commitment. And hot off the press, we were recently contacted by one of our Southend settings managers who has just finished the Elkland training with us to say that they've been awarded Outstanding from Ofsted. And she mentioned that the communication language element of the settings practice was highly commended. She put it down to the fact that she had had the chance to share several strategies and activities learnt through Elkland with the inspector, who was hugely impressed. Thanks, and over to Sian.
Thank you. So, as we said in the beginning, when the early years workforce comes together and are all equally involved in decision making, the levels of engagement and participation increases. And in Southend, when this happens, we have seen a higher success rate in the sharing of key communication and language messages. And many exciting things have developed. Next slide, please. For example, a series of parent-friendly communication and language tips on chatting, singing, playing and reading were, alongside consultation with parents and carers, were co-produced through consultation with the early years workforce. And then that meant that they then shared and promoted them through a variety of ways. And over to Lindsay to find out more.
So one of these ways is through the Talking Heads project. Talking Heads was created in response to the diverse communities within Southend. The early years workforce came together and decided that key communication language messages needed to be trans-languaged into a range of families' home languages and shared with them in video form. Consequently, parents and carers, early years practitioners and community volunteers have offered to represent their community and participate in the videos. For example, here's an image of Ileana from our very own A Better Start Southend creche team sharing Southend's Chat As We Grow tips that Sian's just mentioned in Romanian for our Romanian families. Next slide, please. Finally, because recent research by the National Literacy Trust has shown that the cost of living crisis has impacted on parents and carers being able to purchase books for their children, finding exciting and creative ways to sustain, encourage and promote the importance of reading to parents and carers is key. And this is what makes the role of the workforce even more important. So here's a little moment celebrating how some of our workforce came together to do this through our recent readathon. Thank you.
Hi, and back to me over in Bradford. So it feels like the presentation has come full circle. You've been able to see just some of the few specialist interventions that are offered across the 5 sites across the country to support babies and children, to support parents, to support the workforce, and especially to look at early identification. It's kind of been able to show that by adopting such a holistic approach and accepting that it needs to involve everybody, things have been able to start moving forward. We know that we're really privileged within the ABS sites to be able to develop some of these amazing programmes and to enable these to be part of the evaluation looking at long-term sustainability. We're really starting to see in Bradford how some of the programmes are now being picked up as part of the Start for Life offer or developed across the wider district areas. Next slide, please. All the slides talk about value of partnership working. As we said at the beginning, we briefly touched on the work of Blackpool, we've been able to show how the multi-agency working through their triage panel in Bradford, we've been able to demonstrate how we can lead the work on the integrated pathway for speech and language across the whole district. And we've been able to show, again, how ABS really does truly influence the bigger picture. Next slide, please. Missed the slide. Sorry. So it feels right to finish where we actually started from, reminding everybody that talking really is everybody's business. Supporting parents to talk, to play, to read with their babies and children. Supporting practitioners to understand how much speech, language and communication is so crucial to baby and child development. Linking everyone together through joint working, through partnerships and pathways. Research, testing and learning is all part of the bigger offer from ABS. And I feel everything we've been able to showcase today is able to show the positive impact that this is happening. And a final call to action really is that the wealth of learning from the work at ABS in the 0 to 5 pathway is used to inform and drive the bigger picture for the 0 to 19 work. And hopefully we're going to see that happen in the future. Thank you everyone for listening. And we've just got a couple of minutes left to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our presenters today. That was wonderful. Hope everybody who's in attendance had learnt something from that. We have about 2 minutes left in the group. Just to remind you that we'll be putting together a report after this event. And if you have any questions, we probably don't have time to put them to the presenters today, but please pop them in the chat. So if you want to take a minute or two now before we leave the room to have a think about any questions, pop them in the chat, and we can get feedback in the report. I'll just have a quick scroll through if we have, while you're having a think about that, if we have any questions that we can answer now. Not seeing any. I know we had a request for some further information on the Elkland work. I think there's a couple of links popped in the chat there. If anybody would like to say a little bit more about that now, or where you can find more information, that would be useful. Nope. Any other really burning questions? Question from Karen, are the multi-language videos and leaflets going to be widely shared? Are we able to get links to those to share in our report, presenters?
The talk and play stuff that we do in Lambeth is on the Evelina website, and we can share that link in the report.
Lovely, we'll include those.
And we have links on our Small Steps Big Changes website, and also on the Language Talks website on the Nottingham Healthcare Trust that they lead on.
Lovely, thank you. We'll pop those in our report. Question from Joanne, just to end us, do any of the sites work with other community groups as well, so outside of A Better Start groups?
Yeah, across Blackpool, I think we all work outside of our ABS wards and outside of our sort of ABS remit, and work with lots. The essence of the partnership is that it includes third sector partners and voluntary groups as well.
And particularly parent-run collaborations.
Brilliant, thank you. Any last questions in our last minute?
If anybody would like to hear more about the Elkland Let's Talk with Under 5 course, there's information on the Small Steps Big Changes website that we can actually put a link on here if anyone would like to know more, but also about all our other 0 to 4 interventions that run from 0 to 4 years. It tells you a little bit about them and how to make a referral.
Lovely, thank you. Pop any links in the chat or we can share afterwards. Okay, I think we're out of time, folks. Next up on our event is to head back to the main room. So just click on the blue Leave Room button for our final kind of sum up and close sessions. Thank you very much. Thank you, presenters.